not really a blow against the student. The reality, though, is there is no way for a student to unilaterally apply for one of these grants. There is not an application. We are not able to cover all unmet need. We wish we could, but it would be many, many times more than the resources we have available. So it would be a risky proposition on the part of the student, but if it were to happen, my argument would be it's no different than most scholarship programs that the bulk of which are established up front, betting on the student to do the very sorts of things we're actually affirming that they're doing in practice.
I mentioned the prior iteration, the graduation incentive grant, which we used, which the purpose was to incentivize the students to graduate and change their behavior. One of the reasons that we thought that it was not successful is that we did not see a marked change in student behavior. So they might continue to take courses, but they weren't taking courses at the load necessarily to graduate within a one-year time frame. This led us to the idea of using the loan, which could be replaced by a grant if you met the terms of the contract. So that was our approach to make sure that the students, when I say didn't just take the money, I don't mean that they didn't need the money, but we wanted to use it as a way of changing behavior, and we felt that this was a method that did change student behavior because they could get some free money if they just took the courses and completed their degree.
I think you've heard probably, so if you want to go to the next question.
Sure. So one of the questions that I had is about, you're only giving partial grants, and so what portion of the students are actually able to take advantage of that? So if you're only giving them $900 and the total need is $2,000, what portion are you unable to ultimately get to completion as a result of that?
Let me just explain the logic. What we're doing at the drop period every semester is looking at the roll of students who are scheduled to be dropped and the outstanding balance that they have on their bill. And then we're checking that list for two other criteria. Do the students by federal standards have unmet need, and are they academically on path for graduation by our analytics? So in the case of the students we're actually identifying, for instance, who the average student owes $900, but their total bill was $2,300. They've already paid towards the university $1,400, and they're sitting there with that $900 balance at the drop period. So when we come in and try to help them, we know that the grant we're giving them is covering the rest of their balance. And in some cases, obviously, the balance is higher than that. So it is done strategically at the time of the fee drop each semester, so that we can ensure that the students who we're giving the grants to will be made whole in the sense that they'll be able to stay in their classes because we've covered all the remaining balance for their tuition and fees. Now, we've got many more students who we're just not able to do this for, as I alluded to. You know, we've got some students with balances for a single semester of $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, and this program doesn't have the lifting power to help students in that category. So those students continue to be dropped as they were in semesters prior to the Panther grants.
I will tell you the same is true for us. So when we give a grant, we've paid off the balance in its entirety. And then there's students we just can't reach if those balances are just too high.
This is a simple question, I think, but I'm not a financial aid director or whatever, and I just want to clarify something. When you give these grants, because they have unmet financial need, the grant does not count against, you know, the aid they're receiving. In other words, it's not as though, oh, you got a scholarship, so now we take away some of your whatever. So as long as there's an unmet need balance, this doesn't, you know, it doesn't have a catch-22.
Correct.
Okay.
As long as it's not above the cost of attendance,
Right.
which incorporates transportation, housing, and food and other things, so long as it's not above the cost of attendance.
For any of the panelists, can you comment at all on how you work with undocumented students with regard to your grants, since they don't file FAFSA forms?
Yes. So one of the grants that we actually have is just for what we call Dream Act students. And we actually work with a Latino organization within our community and a Vietnamese organization within our community. And we actually sponsor financially up to 10 students, 5 per organization, to come to our institution. And I think this year we have 4 that came from LEAP, Latino organization, and 2 that came from the Vietnamese organization. But we're able to use private funding for those type of things. But also in the state of Washington this year, we're able to use institutional funding to support undocumented.
The state of Indiana restricts us from using institutional funds for undocumented students or even the Dreamers. So we cannot incorporate them in this program. We do have a small amount of private funding that we use for scholarships, as well as working with community organizations to encourage them to look for funding sources to assist our students.
Hi, good morning. This question's a little contextual, and so if it's not appropriate, I'm happy to talk offline. But thank you. It's okay. I'll just kneel down. All right, thanks. It's good yoga practice. The question's around the organizational design of your student success efforts. So understanding a little bit about within each of your institutional contexts, who does what, and again, if not appropriate, that's okay, but it's kind of interesting to see a little bit about kind of how you all make some of these programs like the completion work happen, and just interested in how it works within each of your institutions.
Yeah, Hans, I'll start by saying that we made an intentional effort to try to coordinate under one division offices that at many institutions are in different parts of the university. A colleague of mine, Larry Abel from Florida State, has said they call them divisions for a reason. And so at Georgia State, the Office of Student Success that I oversee includes not just admissions, registrar, advising, first-year programs, graduation office, scholarship office, career services. It also includes a number of the financial offices, financial aid most centrally, but also student accounts. And so what I think the program that we have, and these sorts of programs do have to be nimble. You've heard a number of people on the panel mention they keep the decision-making team small because this can't be a 2-week vetting process. If what you're trying to do is, put emergency money in front of a student and make sure that they don't drop out, you need to let them know the next day. You can't wait until they've made other plans, or they've been dropped from their classes or whatever, and they've taken a job or are tuned out of the classes that they need to keep up in. So having all those different players around the table, reporting in the same division, meeting on at least a weekly basis, I think has made it a lot easier to bring the different components together that need to be part of these decisions.
IUPUI has a long history of collaboration among a variety of different offices. So the enrollment management offices work very closely with the offices in the Division of Undergraduate Education. And my colleague at the back of the room, Kathy Johnson, was Associate Vice Chancellor of the Division of Undergraduate Education until recently moved into interim executive vice chancellor. So we do it by working together.
We're pretty similar in that, but 2 years ago, we created a student success area that is meant to focus on retention and completion. So that's where my job comes from. And so it's meant to pull together the units that are sort of most things around academic support areas.
manage all of our recruitment and retention efforts, and they're empowered by a chancellor in order to make organizations changes and recommendations so we can move relatively quickly. I'm very fortunate in my unit that 55% of the non-faculty actually report through me. And so I have a very large portion of the campus population.
Any other questions? All right, I have one more. I would like to know, since these programs are relatively new, what are some of the things that you're either thinking about trying or still trying to figure out? Maybe that, maybe you tried something, it didn't work, you're trying something new. What are some of those things that you're contemplating at this stage?
I think the one thing that I would share is we're in the process of beginning a capital campaign, and we have learned that our donors support this type programming for scholarship support than they support just scholarships in general. And so we've found it much easier to tell the student story through this type programming, a targeted programming, than just raising funds for scholarships in general.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I would say are two things for us. One is looking at, do we do some kind of workshop or something that have some of our grant recipients working on campus following the semester that they received the grant, something like that. The other piece, though, too, is leveraging this kind of program and the success of it to look at broader change. One of the pieces we really want to look at is change in our scholarship policies generally. And so do you have scholarship policies broadly that enhance persistence and completion, not just admissions and recruitment? And so we really have to take a look at that, because right now, other than and it's a nice pool of money for our retention and completion grants, we have kind of what I keep referring to as one and done policies still. So if you fall below full-time one semester, you lose all of that money that you got coming into the institution forevermore. If you fall below the GPA one semester. So many of you have already made progress there. We've got to shift our whole scholarship policy and use this as leverage to do that, to really be more persistence and completion based, not just recruitment based.
IUPUI is looking at increasing the amount of institutional need-based aid that we have available. So we're looking at a variety of different efforts on how we can best use that funding. The home stretch program, we did not continue the coaching model. I'm not saying that it won't come back, but we felt that as we had implemented it, it was not significantly effective, and that we needed to go in a slightly different direction. We also decided that in the subsequent year we would focus on 6th year students, not 5th and 6th year students. In part, we have a rate limiter here in how big the program can be by we have a set amount of funding that can be allocated in the loan portion, and so we have to manage that in terms of the amount we award, so we have money for subsequent years waiting for those students who indeed converted to a loan to move into repayment. So this program has some rate limits to it, and we're looking at some other types of use of institutional aid that do not have that rate limiter.
Two observations.